Hey
Okay.
everyone, it's Jenna Melanson from Canadian Beats Media. Today I'm joined by Southern Ontario's Spencer Burton for our latest segment of Zoomies. So welcome, Spencer.
How you doing?
Doing good, and you?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain. It feels like springtime in January. One
It
of the
does.
best feelings of time. Maybe it's scary. I don't know. Right now, I'm wearing like 7 layers, so I feel pretty okay.
Okay. So first off, care to introduce yourself a bit more in depth for our listeners?
You want me to introduce myself?
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, I will do that. My name's Spencer Burton. I'm here today to chat, I guess, a little bit about a record I just released called North Wind out on Dine Alone Records in Canada. Um, let's talk about it. What do you want to talk about it?
Okay.
Okay.
So as you said, you released your album North Wind.
Yeah.
Um, So can you tell us a bit about the inspiration behind the album and how your experience in isolation influenced its creation?
Well, this record, we had a few years, obviously, of a very difficult time, not just me and my family, but kind of the whole world. And because of this, I found myself rather musically and artistically stagnant. Um, but then I just found escape through isolation, and I found inspiration through isolation. I spent a good majority of the past few years rebuilding and fixing, fixing and rebuilding a small cabin off grid in the woods in northern Ontario. And as I was doing that, I found comfort and and peace in my surroundings. Finally, the sound of a loon's call in the morning, wind on the water, through the trees, through the pines. Just to be honest, the sounds of Mother Nature, and she herself is kind of what inspired the majority of this record. I know a lot of people like to go, well, I was listening to this album, I was listening to that album, and these inspired me. But I found myself, I was not listening to any albums at all. I actually didn't have the means to when I was up there off grid. There's no, record players. There's no CD players up there. There's AM radio, and it's usually just some like wild preacher talking about God and the world. So I kind of steered away from that. Instead, I just listened to the sounds of what was happening outside, and that's what really helped bring this album together.
Awesome. So in your press release, Northwind is described as having a different tone compared to your previous work. What motivated the shift, and how do you feel it reflects your artistic growth?
Um, I hear these things said, things like different tone, and I hear people say them, and I hear publicists say it, and I think that it's just, how do I say it? I think that anyone who makes anything always changes their tone a little bit from album to album. They change their sound a little bit. They change their tone, they change their attitude, they change their views, and Northwind is no exception. Of course, things have changed with this album, but I don't think that it's so far from what I've done in the past. Maybe sonically, no, but maybe emotionally. I think that the entire world has changed deeply emotionally over the past few years, and it's opened our eyes to a lot of things. It's opened our eyes to the fact that maybe all of us shouldn't be living the way that we've been living for a very long time. Right? There's a lot more comfort to be found in what I mentioned before, right? The sound of Mother Nature, than there is to be found on an MP3 or a movie or a video game or whatever it is that people have been doing while keeping themselves locked up. I think it helped people realize the past few years that there is this incredibly beautiful world that we've kind of taken for granted, and that world is the one thing that's not only keeping us together, but keeping us whole as individuals. So I don't know. I try and what do you say that? I try to let people know my thoughts on that throughout the
Mm-hmm.
music on the record. But I also am just kind of trying to spread love and peace and a little bit of happiness.
Amazing.
Even though some of the songs are pretty sad, I've been told.
You have already, like ahead of the release, you unveiled a few singles such as Gone Fishing, Rolling On, and Coyote.
Uh,
How did you go about choosing the tracks to be singles?
That's always a hard one. You know, I think it just kind of, I love all the songs individually, each in their own way. To be honest, when it comes to singles, a lot of the times I just kind of jump on my kids out of nowhere and say, which song is the best? You know, and the children are very honest. Sometimes I'll just say, oh, they're all trash, Dad. You know, like they'll say something like that. But in the case of this album, Northwind, you know, my kids were like, oh, you gotta put out Going Fishing. Like that song rules, Dad. Love fishing, you know. And then for the next one, they were like, oh, we really like the way you sing in this one. You know, truth be told, I take a lot of advice from a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Like you said, they're honest.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you had to choose just one song from Northwind for a brand new listener to check out, which would you choose?
Oh man, that's a tough one. It depends on the day, right? I mean, if I was gonna say, you know, if I was gonna meet somebody and they were in like an incredible mood, like such a good mood that I felt like maybe they needed to come down a few notches, I'd probably show them the song Goodbye, bring them back down to the level of normalcy that probably we're all used to. But you know, I'll probably just go with what my kids like to listen to the most, and they really like the song Going Fishing. So they love fishing. I love fishing. I think a lot of people. Fishing's fun. It's relaxing. It's peaceful. It's exciting. Yeah, going fishing.
Definitely. Okay, so another thing from your press release that caught my attention is that you're not trying to write music these days, but rather write good feelings.
Yeah, my whole life, I've been surrounded by incredible artists, incredible musicians that humble me like you wouldn't believe. And because of this, I think I've always tried to compete with that in a way. I think we all do, right? We all compete with our peers, not necessarily in a negative way, but just to, you know, be part of a community. And because of this, I always found myself forcing poetry, forcing songs at times, right? Just trying to make something that I could gather approval on. And again, over the past few years, I realized that I don't think that's who I am. I think that there is poetry in the music I write. I think there's poetry in everything. I think there's everything. But you know, I truly believe that with these songs, my favorite songs I've ever written, maybe the best songs I've ever written. Obviously, I'm biased, but you know, for me, it was time to stop reaching so hard for something and just like feel good and write a song about going fishing, or write a song about how beautiful it is in nature, you know, or write a song about my children, right? It's just like songs that I needed as therapy to help me get through certain things. And because of this, I found that I was writing good feelings instead of songs.
Yeah, I love that. So the next 5 questions are just for fun, kind of a quick fire.
Let's go.
If you could have any superpower, which would you choose?
Oh, I would choose, man, it's always, that's a tough one, you know, because I guess you say it's a quick question, but that question, you wouldn't believe the amount of time I've spent alone in my living room with my debating this question, you know. But invisibility always seemed like a good one, because I mean, you know, whatever, walk into Elon Musk's house and take some money. I'm not a thief. I'm not a criminal. That, you know, this 1% needs to start spreading the wealth a little bit. But you know, I've always been, since I was a child, I guess this is my go-to answer. Since I was like a young child, I've always been into superheroes. I always thought they were cool. And since a very early age in the 80s, I felt such, I think a lot of people do, but I feel such a bond with the comic book character Wolverine. I just think he's cool. He spends so much time in the woods. He's always looking for peace, and his powers, albeit just what he was born with, like these cool claws and this healing ability. I think there's something beautiful in that. Like the idea that you could potentially live longer than you're supposed to. There's also a sadness to it, and I think that's a nice reprimand, right? It's you live this long, healthy life because you can never get sick, you can never get injured, you're practically invincible, but you will die one day. But then there's the other side where you have to live your life watching all the things that you care about and all the things that you love pass before you do. I think, with any question like that, you can't just take a power that's going to be incredibly beneficial to you. You have to take it with once, it's good. There's got to be a heavy pleasure to it and a heavy negative weight as well. So yeah, I would have that guy's powers.
Okay, awesome. What's your go-to cover song?
My go-to cover song for many, many years, I would play a song called The Last, I'm going to get the title wrong because I've just been calling it by the chorus for so long, but it's called The Last Thing I Needed, first thing this morning. And it's a Gary P. Nunn song, which Willie Nelson made famous. And it's one of the most beautiful, saddest songs you could ever hear. But that's a song that I love. I love playing that song.
Okay. If you could work with any fellow Canadian artist who you haven't already, who would you choose?
Fellow Canadian artist who I haven't had the pleasure of working with, and I could. I haven't already worked with them. Oh man, I've never been a big collaborator. There's nothing wrong with it. I've just never done it. I've had friends in bands and we've done things together. But I've never, I think I do look up to a lot of musicians because I think their songs are so incredible. And because of that, I've never wanted to, I don't know if it's a fear, but I've never really wanted to partake in what they do because I love sitting back and listening to what they do and having it be a surprise. But I will say that there's this dude, William Prince, who is just an incredible songwriter. And I only found out about him maybe 3-4 years ago. And everything I hear that guy does is phenomenal. However, like I said, I think I'd much rather just sit back and listen to the beauty he creates,
Okay, that's fair. If your music could be featured in any TV show, which TV show would you want?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Watch a lot of TV. I don't really know what's going on, and I can think of things, but I also, out of respect for the program that I do occasionally watch, know that my music wouldn't fit ideally in those programs. So I'm trying to think where my music would fit. TV. What's on TV? I guess it would just be cool to have my music in the background of I don't know, maybe like a cool like hunting, fishing show. Maybe some like a television program about cooking cool food. Maybe house renovations, things like that. What's the show that I sometimes watch when I have something, something like where it's like 7 people stranded in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, like something like that. That would be pretty cool. I can't really think of anything else because most of the stuff I watch is like fantasy, sci-fi. My music doesn't really fit. I couldn't hear my song in Game of Thrones, but that's what I'm watching, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And last but not least, what's your favorite warm drink on a winter day?
Oh, my favorite warm drink on a winter's day. You know what? -10 out. You got to go outside and do some farm chores. You just hit that barn, walk in there. You got some goats kicking around. You happen to have a little ladle in your pocket, straight out of the teat, hot, fresh, warm goat's milk. Nothing beats it.
Okay. You have goats, I assume, then.
I do.
Awesome.
We got some farm animals, but right now we got a mother goat and its baby in the barn, and because of this, she's giving milk. Yeah, nothing beats a hot goat's milk.
Awesome. So that's it for Zoomies. Thank you for joining me, and congrats on the album.
Thanks for having me.